sunrise in the mountains of Nepal. The names of Nepal's major peaks, Annapurna, Dhaulagiri, the great Sagarmatha herself, the Nepali name for Everest, are the most familiar aspect of the Himalayan country. But there is another side to Nepal. Where the mountains drop away to the south, a succession of deep stream-cut valleys fall 8,000 meters, all in the space of 130 kilometers on the map. As the land gets lower, the country changes, until at only 120 meters above sea level, there lies the Terai, the fertile plain on Nepal's southern border. The mountain streams feed great rivers, which water an expanse of marshy lowland jungle. Until malaria was brought under control in the 1950s, the Terai was the worst area in the world for the disease. For centuries, Nepal was closed to the outside world, and little was known of the mountainous kingdom sandwiched between India and Tibet. In the 1950s, that changed, and one place which is now a favorite destination is Royal Chitwan National Park. Here, where the Rapti River sweeps across the plain, is an area rich with gaur, a type of wild cattle, deer, the one-horned Indian rhinoceros, rare gharial and mugger crocodiles, an area of broad river flats and tall jungle. Above all, perhaps, it has always been a stronghold of the tiger. Much of Chitwan is covered in grass, grass as high as, in the words of the song, an elephant's eye. In a clearing in the heart of the national park is one of the lodges where tourists can stay. The buildings are barely visible from the air, sheltered among the tall jungle trees. Here, on the banks of the Roo River, there used to be a great hunt from time to time. Some rare film taken by a distinguished visitor on one such expedition in 1937 gives a flavour of how things used to be. Paradoxically, it is because the area was once protected for hunting that it is now the perfect place to protect from hunting. In those days, the elephant, trained to remain steady even before a charging rhino, was regarded as the only safe means of transport. At the climax of the hunt, they bag a prize trophy. The animals which were once protected for the hunter's sport were the ancestors of today's endangered population. In 1962, His late Majesty King Mahendra declared Chitwan a sanctuary. In 1973, his son, King Birendra, formally gave it the status of a national park. Today's more enlightened visitors carry cameras. A regular flight from Kathmandu takes just half an hour. Visitors disembark their flight to be greeted by elephants, waiting to carry them on to their destination. The snowy peaks of Annapurna don't seem far away, but down here on the plains, it's hot and humid. The visitors have come from the cool, clear air of Kathmandu. Here, it seems like another country, almost oppressive. But there's the excitement of the jungle on the horizon. Each visitor pays the Nepalese government a fee, and the money is used to help the park. Riding an elephant seems like a novelty, but it makes sense. It is far more tranquil and comfortable than a journey in a noisy Land Rover, and the elephants are at home in this terrain. There are rivers to cross. The elephants take them in their stately stride, going where the hardiest vehicle would be swamped. The view from an elephant's back is better too. On the other side of the river is the national park with its lodges. This one is called tiger tops. All the lodges are designed to blend inconspicuously with their surroundings. It is part of the Nepalese government's plan to encourage tourists to enjoy wildlife without harming the environment that supports the animals. The visitors dismount at first floor level. Their numbers are carefully controlled to reduce the level of disturbance. As the food for the working elephants arrives, the mahouts attend to their grooming. Scratching posts are just one of the comforts provided for the elephants. They will have plenty of work in the coming week. A well-dusted elephant is a comfortable elephant. The next morning, the exploration of the forest begins, as always, on elephant back. The early morning is the best time to see wildlife, once the dawn mist has risen from the river. There's another good reason for preferring elephants to other forms of transport. The grass here can grow up to 8 meters tall, and the park holds many rhinos. The Indian rhinoceros can be very temperamental. The elephants are still trained by their drivers to remain steady in the face of a charge. Once, these rhinos were found right across the Indian subcontinent. Now, the need for land resources by a growing human population is a major threat to their status. In Chitwan, the rhino population has done well in recent years and made a healthy recovery. There were between 60 and 80 here in the late 1960s, and at the last count in 1994, their numbers had increased to 450. It is very exciting to get close to a rhino and elephant back, and showing rhinos in this way to people who would only otherwise see them in zoos may perhaps generate a greater concern for their long-term survival. This is a young male, quite unlikely to charge, but the elephants and their drivers are ready for him if he does. Rhino horn is still traded widely throughout Asia, in the belief that it will cure a host of ailments, including AIDS. Chitwan is well guarded, but still 4 rhinos have been killed by poachers during the last year, including a pregnant female. Chitwan also protects other animals as well, like these langurs, graceful treetop monkeys. The low-lying woodlands beside the river are the haunt of another large herbivore apart from the rhinoceros. The visitors are on the lookout for gaur, the wild cattle which feed at the forest edge in the early morning. They are almost as unpredictable as rhinos, and a big bull gaur can weigh as much as a ton. Not all of Chitwan's animals are large and dangerous. The tracks beaten down by the elephant's feet provide a nesting place for the wattled plover, an elegant riverside wader. Of course, nesting here is a bit like camping on a motorway when the elephants come by. The parent plover is understandably anxious, but it's said an elephant always knows where to put its feet, and the camouflaged chick is left unharmed. On the return journey, the visitors encountered another rhino in the elephant grass. Among this party was the late distinguished Professor Bernard Zimek, who was instrumental in getting international support for the park. To him, the rhinos were more than armor-plated giants. They were symbols of yet another success in the efforts to protect the world's wild places before it's too late. Two other species of Asian rhinoceros, the Javan and Sumatran rhinos, are both highly endangered. There are probably only 70 Javan rhinos and around 460 Sumatran rhinos left in the wild. Figures for the great Indian rhino are a little better. Current estimates of the total population in India and Nepal stand at around 2,000. Groups like this meet to graze on freshly shooting grass. Shallow pools provide the chance of a wallow, the rhino's chief pleasure in the heat of the day. The one-horned rhinoceros has an almost primeval appearance with its heavy snout and thickly folded hide. It has survived for thousands of years here and deserves a place of safety, but is endangered and still vulnerable to poaching. The two rivers that flow through Royal Chittawan National Park, the Roo and the Rapti, are what make the area so rich in wildlife. They also irrigate small farming communities along their banks. The rivers mark the park boundary, and when they are in flood during the monsoon, they can change course to lop a few kilometres off the protected area or add to it. By October, they are peaceful once more. Some of the local inhabitants take fish from the river. Because they are on the far bank, they are technically outside the park, but their fishing is still controlled by regulations. Another successful fisherman is the gharial, or fish-eating crocodile. This ominous shape rippling along the water's surface is a broad-snouted crocodile, known here by its local name, mugger. The mugger will eat anything, not just fish. Another omnivorous creature is the ruddy shelduck, a universal scavenger. White egrets are more purely fish eaters, though they sometimes go ashore for insects. On the bank, hog deer and peacocks take the morning sun. The jackal, too, is a scavenger. In warm climates, the role of scavenger is vital, and there are plenty of them. But the jackal wouldn't hesitate to take the eggs of the pratinko if it could find them. True water birds like the greenshank share the river with land birds. A golden oriole uses the river just as a place to drink. As well as the Eurasian kingfisher, Chittawan has a large population of white-breasted kingfishers, shallow water feeders, which often take crabs from the river's edge. A male presents its latest capture to its mate. The silence of the drifting canoe enables the visitors to get very close to feeding kingfishers, normally timid birds. The display of the white-breasted kingfisher at such close range is almost dazzling. Even the beautiful Eurasian kingfisher looks a little drab beside such glory. An apparently idyllic and tranquil setting, but it is a little misleading. The river at Chittawan is a source of water for the villages nearby, for the farmers and their cattle. They have been living on its banks for centuries, and they've developed a working relationship with the animals, even the rhinos, which often raid their crops. The farmers don't take violent action against them. They just station guardians to scare them off. The rhinos are protected by law. The villagers' cattle aren't as law-abiding as their masters, however. The tall, lush grasses of Chitwan are tempting to a herd watering outside the park on the other side of the river. And before long, they're almost bound to make the crossing. Farmers are allowed to collect fodder for their cattle and grass for thatching for just 10 days each year. However, sometimes stray cattle get into the park. When that happens, the cattle are impounded. The rhinos and the cattle tolerate each other quite calmly. Inside the park, it's the rhinos which are legally entitled to this grass. In many national parks all over the world, the major problem is enforcing the regulations. Usually, there just aren't enough staff to watch the park's extensive boundaries. At Chitwan, though, they have an advantage over most other parks. A detachment of park guards is trained by the army to police the boundaries and deal with infringements. Their tasks include rounding up stray cattle and keeping a lookout for poachers and any other offenders. It is a delicate balance, keeping the farmers in line without provoking ill feeling, but their role is fairly well accepted now. A party of calves becomes the subject of a rounding up operation. The cattle will be driven back across the river, out of the park and into the pound. Another offence the guards have to watch out for is grass cutting. The villagers are allowed to take grass from the edges of the park to thatch their houses only during January, just before the old grass is burnt off by the park staff, ready for the monsoon. At that time, it's best for the job, and it's no use to the rhinos, who prefer green food. At other times of the year, grass cutting is not permitted. The rules are necessary to protect the rhino's food supply and the whole habitat. The park warden follows a detachment of soldiers on his elephant. Among the other endangered species in the park is the tiger. There are only between 60 and 80 of them here, but not surprisingly, the guards move carefully, just in case they meet one in the grass. One of the guards has caught some illicit grass cutters red-handed. Carrying the evidence, they'll be taken back to park headquarters. One reason for visitors coming to Chitwan is that it is one of the best places to see tigers. A party of trackers sets out in the morning to find out whether there's one around for the visitors to see that night. This is more like the jungle of travelers' tales, dark and green and hung with creepers. Near the trail, there's a small group of jungle fowl, the ancestors of domestic chickens the world over. The jungle seems quiet just here, but it's full of life. A yellow-naped woodpecker pauses during work on its nest hole. On a nearby tree, a golden-backed woodpecker. You wouldn't expect the tree-dwelling birds to give away the tiger's presence by their behavior. They're safely off the ground. To a rose-ringed parakeet, the men are more disturbing than a tiger, but it takes little notice even of them. One bird that can give away the tiger's whereabouts is the peacock, calling in the far distance. There are times when an intuitive feeling tells the tracker that he's on the right scent. Confirmation comes from claw marks on a tree, which a tiger has been using as a scratching post. The scratch marks are relatively fresh. The party moves on, under the baleful eye of a tree monitor, disturbed from a raid on a bird's nest. To a practiced eye, a tiger's pug marks will give an idea of its size and its sex. That silence doesn't mean that there's no tiger around. One of those two cheetah, grazing quietly beside a pool, could make a convenient meal tonight. A fishing eagle is watching the pool. It's quite possible that the tiger is too. As the afternoon wears on, there's a feeling of expectancy, a tension in the air that's hard to define. More and more, it feels as if this is the place. The banks of a little stream have pockets of sand between the boulders. Perhaps a tiger has left its footprint there. The tracker's sixth sense is seldom wrong, even if he doesn't know himself how it works. These pug marks were made by a fully grown tiger last night. A tiger was resting nearby all day. As dusk falls, it starts to move about. One of the trackers watches from a safe place. Among the rarest animals in the world, and surely one of the fiercest and most majestic, a tiger feeds in the jungle. Even in Chitwan, where tigers are carefully protected, they are in danger from poachers, who could cause the tiger's extinction in the wild within just a few years.
Think kapok and you think pillow stuffing, but the animal world sees the kapok tree very differently. Find out more tomorrow night.